I've had some scary moments, and I mean, it's probably one of the few places in the world where nerve agents are a genuine threat because of the valleys of the winds that run down them. All little comedy things. It's like our EOD guys. They decided, no, it wasn't EOD. It was the dog handlers. They decided that they're going to train their dogs by burying their test explosives all in one spot in the middle of the night out near a road.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. Battery level. Well, if the battery goes out, we'll just restart it. It has happened. Often. So. Oh, height shoes. Yeah. Did you look it up or something? Is it the same composition?
Actually, no, I didn't. I started looking to make sure I called it the right name, but I was like, wait a sec.
Yeah, basically just like sugar and gelatin and some kind of vague fruit flavor.
It's not vague, it's awesome. Hydrogenated palm kernel oil, gelatin. That's what the probably unique texture, I guess, is hydrogenated palm kernel oil. Glucose syrup also. Glucose syrup is where it's at.
Well, yeah, of course. Glucose. I mean, you had me at glucose.
I don't know.
And syrup just made it better.
It's a pure sugar, so it doesn't bother a lot of people that don't like the corn syrup.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Don't get along with.
Yeah. So. Well, I like sugar.
It is the most commonly abused addictive chemical probably on Earth.
Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with that one. Or especially the most acceptable to abuse.
Well, I mean, it's
socially acceptable.
I mean, like all things, people judge other people based on the things that they themselves do not do. So, if you're not a smoker, clearly you're not one of those unrighteous smokers.
Right.
If you smoke pot, then you're just an easygoing normal guy, and all those other people that don't smoke it are just uptight, righteous wannabes.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
It's the basic standard of human judgment. Basic human standard of human standards of judgment.
If it disagrees with what I believe, then it's wrong, and if it agrees with what I believe, then it's right.
Yeah. If it disagrees with what I do, it's wrong.
Oh, well,
belief
follows. There's a distinction.
Belief tends to follow action to a much more a very disturbing level.
Sure.
People justify what they do. They're quite clever. So sure, heard some really impressive ones.
Yeah. We'll probably should introduce you to the listener. Today we have Jacob, a former member of the second most ironically named branch of the military, and that is Army Intelligence.
Hey.
It's only funny because it's true.
Well, what can I say? High IQ and smart are two different things that don't necessarily reside in the same person.
Were most of the people in your unit high IQ or smart or neither?
There were some of all kinds. But I mean, there's something that said the old I forget which Greek guy said. Some Greek philosopher said something along the lines that without there's no genius without some insanity.
Sure.
some people kind of lean pretty heavily in one direction or the other.
With the unfortunate result that when people recognize that statement, sometimes when they see insanity, they assume genius.
True. This is true.
Which is what I aspire to, that people think that of me.
Oh, well, admittedly, genius is often used to describe someone who just happened to be right, regardless of how they arrived there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Eureka and all that.
Something like that.
Although he was, Archimedes, was intelligent enough. He might have happened across it, but he was intelligent enough to realize the difference. I don't know. Kind of like Newton. I'm sure a lot of people had apples fall on their head, but he was the first one who said, hey.
Well, Newton was almost certainly on the spectrum. If you look at some of, and also,
sure.
And he was also, I think he suffered a little bit from, once you reach a certain level of the IQ, then it's pretty much impossible to find anyone to relate to. So
Sure. Yeah.
One of the great creators of insanity really is loneliness.
Well, the spectrum is really just a grade of how cool you are. Let's be honest.
Is that what they're calling it now? Who told you this?
To a certain extent. Maybe there's a bell curve, or not a bell curve, but there's a point of optimum efficiency. You want to be on the spectrum, but not off the edge of it.
Well, that's of course subjective to whatever you're trying to accomplish. So, if you're trying to be the guy who writes the original book on mathematics, well, I mean, you can really be really high in the IQ and low in the social skills, and you're just great. So,
yeah, and be widely read for a long time.
Yes,
and to great value of a lot of people, I'm sure. So, well, there's one rabbit trail passed by.
Oh, there we go.
What? So military, army, etc. Service. What did you do? What's your story?
Well, intelligence analyst all the way. I kind of got in. When I got in, I told them that's what I wanted to do, and I had the scores for it. So they
okay. So from the get-go, you like from the recruiter or from like boot camp?
No, from the recruiter. I looked through a bunch of jobs, and it looked like what I wanted to do. I kind of debated different things. I kind of played with the Marines for a while, and some family members talked me out of that. I don't know if that was a good or bad decision, but it's the decision I made. I don't know, the Marines' reputation as a cult. I don't know how well
right.
I don't know how well that would have gone over with me, but
yeah, it definitely has a mentality about it.
I might have bought in, but probably more likely I'd just definitely not fit in.
Just gotten either completely ostracized or kicked out real early.
I just would have been really annoyed.
Yeah.
Huh. I mean, some people it just doesn't work. I mean, I've heard of several people who've met, the staff sergeant Marine that used to be in the Marines. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked to the recruiter, and you said I want to do Army intelligence, and you were successful.
Oh yeah, I mean,
because you had high scores. You said
I get a pretty good ASVAB score. I mean, I guess I've always been good at multiple choice tests, and it showed up there. But I mean, I looked through. I mean, I spent a long time looking through different MOSs, and that was the one that appealed to me. I've always been interested in land warfare. I've read a ton of history books about tactics and what wins wars, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So that seemed like a good way to go from the enlisted standpoint. It was. I mean, it's one thing I think it was really just. It was good advice going in. Is just be aware when you go in that they'll tell you about the they'll advertise the 10% stuff that's really cool. And if you like that enough to put up with the other 90% of the stuff that's ranges from extremely annoying to just downright boring, then
Sure.
you'll love your job.
Sure.
And if you can't do that, then you... Yeah.
So did reality match your expectations for what you thought the job was going to be? At least that 10% maybe?
Yes and no. I think I was good at the analyst part. I've heard multiple more experienced guys comment that basically there's good analysts and there are good soldiers, and it's extraordinarily rare to find someone who's both. And I'm inclined, honestly, in my own opinion, to think that they are actually at odds with each other. To be a good analyst, you have to be I have my own kind of theory on it, but basically you have to be scrupulously honest with them. And there's a tendency in the military, and it's kind of an inherent problem in any highly structural authoritarian type organization, that people will acquire almost unconsciously the tendency to tell people what they want to hear. So you have to be really guard against that to be a good analyst, and you have to be able to tell people who are in charge of you that your opinion. And maybe a lot of them will know more than you and have more experience than you, but you have to be willing to just say, this is my opinion, and just straight out say it.
Sure.
And be able to back it up.
Sure.
And that could be, if you're working with a more mature listener, then yeah, he'll really appreciate that. And if you're not, then you'll get chewed out. So it's difficult to maintain a military soldier type mentality and the ability to straight up disagree and tell someone this is wrong, this is why.
Well, and also, to be a successful soldier, there's an element of risk taking, I guess. Like if you're making a tactical decision or something, it can be logical, but also there's risk or kind of a gamble. Whereas an analyst, more computing. Is that right? Like just information in, information out? Or am I just exaggerating?
I mean, both of them are doing that.
You're probably right. What do I know?
Well, it's just kind of it's finding the way to balance. Sometimes you just have to tell people what they don't want to hear. And it's, I had to work a lot of the balance because I tend to be more blunt, and growing up experiences with authority figures wasn't the best, so I had to watch myself to keep from kind of projecting that onto my leaders. But I was fortunate. I saw some people that I really felt bad for them. That's your boss. I'm glad they're not. Right. I'm glad that you went there, not me. So, but I was very fortunate, especially some of my early NCOs were really good. But it's some great conversations about just kind of the theory. I mean, one I really remember, a guy was talking in Korea was just talking about, kind of the being disabused of the idea that, in the military, you go in and, kind of, they're all men of honor, and, you kind of expect people to do the right thing because it's the right thing. And no, like they're human too.
Sure. Yeah. It's a cross section of
America,
but to a certain extent.
Also, I mean, the thing, if you're honest with yourself, when you're observing other people and you see them do something that you think is wrong, but they don't see it, if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize that at some point someone's going to look at you and see that in you, and they'll be right. So really, you have to look at it and find a way to it makes you a lot more humble. To a certain extent, people who think themselves righteous will look at other people and, how to describe this? Will expect other people to be righteous. And when they're not, you have to realize, they think they're doing the right thing.
Sure.
Or they're okay with that. No, maybe I need to look at myself. Maybe I'm doing the same thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of things a lot of social skills. I mean, a lot of homeschoolers will really get up in arms if I say this, but I'll say it as a homeschooler that when you're homeschooled, you have to make sure your kids are getting properly socialized. And that there are...
Sure.
There are... And what I mean by that is just learn social skills, learn how to interact with different people from different backgrounds. I mean, there's certainly strong arguments to be made for homeschooling, and I will probably almost certainly do it if I ever have kids, but you have to recognize that you're giving up something that a lot of people have in terms of learning how to interact with a lot of different people.
Right. So going in as a homeschooler, you were a little bit maybe at a disadvantage, I guess.
Yeah, some of it is just my family lived out in the country and we didn't interact with that many people. And some of that is just I'm not
a jerk.
Facial expressions don't show up over this, but I definitely give them a look over that. We've known each other for a while. But I'm just not naturally as sociable.
Sure. Yeah.
In retrospect, I probably should have leaned more into it, but wisdom is the thing you acquire immediately after you need it the most.
Right.
Is a saying I find myself repeating a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was interesting. It was interesting because I've been since, I was 11. I've been way taller and bigger than pretty much everyone around me. And going into a situation where, I'm not the biggest and strongest, I couldn't just walk into a situation and just go away just because I'm standing there.
Right.
So it was interesting just learning how to deal with different people and learning how, my habits. I had some really bad habits of how to interact with people. So I kind of had to, it's not a comfortable thing having to learn all that stuff when you're 24 and kind of wish you already knew it and everyone expects you to already know it.
Right.
But it was just, it was very good for me to go in. I really needed it.
So what was, obviously you can't contrast your own experience because it's all you experienced, but how do you think it was different having gone in older than your average 17 or 18-year-old recruit? Are you aware of the differences, or was it just something you experienced and you don't know? There's no way to tell the difference.
I was certainly more mature in some ways than some of them. It was kind of
sure.
You just eventually you're 18, you're stupid, you don't know any better.
Right.
You just have to roll with it.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but yeah. It was kind of crazy. I'd just never cussed before the army, and the guys at basic were like,
right.
He never cusses. We got to get him to do something, and it's like, you can't cuss on cue. It just doesn't work. It doesn't have that feel.
Oh yeah, sure.
I probably cuss quite a bit now, but most people think I never do because it's usually under my breath, but. Yeah, You can't put feeling into it with if you're just say damn or something.
It's like when you're a kid and your parents are like say I'm sorry, like mean it.
That's I consider that, I don't know, that's abuse in my mind. I'd rather
okay.
I consider whacking your kid because he did something stupid to be perfectly acceptable, but trying to make him say he's sorry when he doesn't actually believe it. That's abuse in my mind.
Right. But like the difficulty of being genuine about it or being spontaneous, the spontaneity of it lends a lot to the value of it. Yeah. Or the impact, I guess.
It's a form of lying in my mind.
Cussing?
No, cussing when you don't feel it. It's like you're just saying it just like...
Sure. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so... Yeah, but as far as like the age difference, it was just kind of there was a little bit, but it didn't greatly impact.
Well,
your boot camp
the biggest
experience.
Well, normally I'd say that there were a certain amount of social differences between age groups, but for me the biggest one was homeschooled.
Sure, it was more of a social thing than an age
homeschooled in a Christian, I guess, very conservative Christian upbringing. So my life experience and such was so much greater. I mean, certainly the age was there, but it was almost
Even if you were the same
almost
age,
invisible,
there'd be differences.
invisible compared to the bigger things that really kind of reared their ugly head, as it were.
Sure. Huh. So when I kind of asked this a little bit already, but when were you guaranteed your job? Was it at the recruiters, or the recruiter promised it and then you had to take other tests?
By contract, you're at least at that time. I don't know what it is now.
You're guaranteed an attempt at it.
You're guaranteed an attempt at it.
Okay. And then
I mean, there's a couple ways. I don't know. The guys at MEPS were I don't know. The guy who did security clearances at MEPS, which you needed to do to get into my school. I don't know. I think I had something on my record from years before, because at the time I didn't even really track credit. I didn't even have a credit card. So I had like some $6 thing from an unreturned DVD that he didn't send me.
Oh,
I almost skipped that class.
Ow.
So trying to track down and pay this is like, who do I even owe it to?
Right. What was the concern there? Just like leverage, or you're unreliable, or
it was like him being super anal retentive, I guess. I mean, there's a bias towards the easily measurable results, so they make a big deal about debts and such for security clearances, because I mean people have used that in the past to get leverage over people for information.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen people that have families in communist China that were fine.
Right.
It's like, I mean, nothing. I mean, it's not even any sort of a honesty with the guy thing. I mean, I didn't know him too well, but he seemed like a decent guy. But it was like, I mean, how far is it of a stretch is it for the Chi-Coms to, arrest his family on some trumped up thing? And I mean, let's be honest, if someone called you and your mom said your mom's up for murder charges or whatever, and she might get executed, but we can kind of make it go away, what would you do? It's a pretty hard call.
It's a little more leverage than a $6 credit bill.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people I had a guy who, I guess he got in the military because he'd done a business and he was like $2 million in debt, and he ended up not. It was weird. Some of the things he couldn't get a security clearance, but he did end up teaching a golf class where he met a bunch of higher officers, and he was apparently quite good from what I've heard. People who golf with him, and he did. Helped everyone with their taxes on post. So it's kind of
helped or helped.
I don't know. I guess he didn't help me with my taxes, but he was actually an official position. He was actually doing it for the Army.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Huh.
So I mean, he probably was grossly overqualified.
Sure. Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess is better than underqualified, but
right.
It was kind of one of those things where I think he got in the Army kind of just like, you know what, I'm going to kind of get out of this and do something, live a normal life for a little while. And
sure.
Apparently he knew a bunch of people. I mean, I kind of doubted him because, you probably all met that person who knows everybody, and you're like, yeah, that story sounds a little fake, but I mean, apparently he golfed with some famous people, and for people who golf with him, he was quite good. So I suspect he was actually telling the truth.
But, interesting.
So,
But so boot camp, and then where? What or anything else about boot camp? Any experiences, or just you were there and you got out?
I don't know, little things. I don't know if I'm still kind of like, I don't know if I did the right thing, but some guy would not do his fire guard shift, so I dumped a bottle of water on him, and he threw me around a few places, and I apparently discovered that my voice could go a lot higher than I realized. It's like, do your job. It was not very manly, I'll admit. So he got up. I guess he eventually did it, and people were like getting up, like, what was going on?
Oh, what fire guard is? That's like during the night, someone has to stay awake.
It's just, I mean, it's not really fire guard. It's more like someone's sitting up because they're trying to teach you how to do. I guess it is guarding against fire, but what's the odd in a concrete building? How often is fire going to happen? I
don't know.
Someone's watching. Someone's watching, so that someone wants to go over and visit the female barracks or something. I guess they're somebody saw them.
Sure.
So,
So then, where do you go from there?
From there down to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. That was an interesting place. I like the weather. I think I got the short end of the stick on instructors. The ours were not very experienced, but
was that for your AIT or whatever, or
yes.
advanced? Yeah.
Advanced training just for the specific job. Basically, I mean, if you take death by PowerPoint and then do it for 12 hours, maybe it was 8 or 10 hours a day for 6 months. Some of the guys who get the best in the class were the ones who would just sit up straight, lean against the wall and close their eyes and fall asleep. I mean, after a while, it was kind of like, yeah.
Oh, wow. A very hurry up and wait mentality, even when you're learning.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things where I really kind of was jealous of the other classes, because they had guys who'd done in the field, done it, and they had stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where you really get the application. That's where you get the meaning. I mean, some of that's just the teaching methods. They talk about, using narrative to teach. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, a lot of the great teachers have always used that method. That was the method of teaching for so long, and we've actually gotten away from it. So, I mean, a lot of it's, well, why do you study this? So you have to have that, that story about, I did this or this cool trick that we were able to figure out, because a lot of it, real good intel work is figuring out patterns. So what kind of patterns can you look for? And I don't know. I don't know if I am. I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, so I don't know if it was affecting me, but just at about the 5-month mark, I couldn't concentrate in class.
You were zoning out on everything.
I mean, 2 monster. I think I calculated I was averaging about, 1,100 milligrams of caffeine by lunch.
Whew.
And
wow,
I could not concentrate. It was just like, this is so boring. So,
if I had that much caffeine, I'd have trouble focusing too.
Well, yeah, it was like, that's where I learned that there's a level of diminishing returns with me and caffeine. So, I never really got around to it, but I kind of wish they could do their training different. And I don't know if I know my instructors, it was their first class, so maybe in that, but
so maybe they just slid into the default mode of PowerPoint.
Probably.
Yeah.
And somebody would say, you should probably have like a senior and a junior, but I don't think that's what I had. But it's been long enough, maybe I've missed it, and admittedly
you were bored, so maybe you weren't paying attention.
Paying attention. I don't know. It's been a long time. A lot of things have happened since.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Were you there? You said you liked the weather. Were you there in summer or winter? Or
I was there
6 months?
I think I was there during the summer. It was pretty warm, but it was a dry heat, and I think that's like the term. It's a quote unquote dry heat, yeah. But it was a lot more. It didn't. I don't know, it wasn't like down in Fort Jackson where you put your armor on and
you lose a quart of water just doing that.
Well, yeah, it was like but your whole uniform was cannot carry any more liquid in it.
Right.
So
just saturated with sweat.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, but I mean, of course, that has the different problem is the sweat goes away so fast that if you're not careful, you can get dehydrated without necessarily noticing it.
Oh, in the desert.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That's a good point.
If you're not, I mean, it's something that's just a lot getting used to. Yeah.
And then off to, you graduated?
From there, I graduated. Went from there to, Korea. Was it Camp Hovey.
Up near Pyongyang?
I guess all of Korea is near Pyongyang. That place is a stone's throw from everything. I mean, it's commonly said that it's almost like you look at Korea and it's almost like you have a test of take the same culture and expose one to communism for 40 years and the other does free enterprise and look at the difference and you can see it from space.
Yeah.
So, admittedly, the South of Korea was, I don't know, they were effectively a dictatorship for a long time. So, that's like 20 years of capitalism, probably. Less than 20, 30, 40, I don't know. I'm not too much on their history.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Okay. And same job, just different unit?
Well, there I was up with a artillery unit.
Is that a deployment to South Korea?
No.
No, it's a posting? Or
am
I using the wrong terms?
I wouldn't consider, I don't think any soldier would consider a deployment. The Army might consider it. I mean, there's a lot of debate in that. They want to give people a combat patch.
But effectively, it's a posting.
It'd
be like a stateside.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if I'd be embarrassed to say I was deployed to Korea.
Sure, yeah. I went over and, bought stuff in South Korea.
I've had some scary moments, and it's probably one of the few places in the world where nerve agents are a genuine threat because of the valleys with the winds that run down them. Drop it at the head and have it flow down.
Because if they were used, they could be effective.
Yeah.
Whereas,
if you're out in the big wide plain, it'll get dissipated. And
right.
Eventually, not really be that effective.
Okay.
But basically, they just stare at each other, and I think they have one of the biggest standing militaries in the world. South Korea does. North Korea, who knows? You read some of they get.
Right.
They have to turn in their bullets afterward, and
right.
It's like it's just like, I suspect that if we wanted to end North Korea, we could just kind of walk up there send a company of Marines or something up, and I don't know. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, if you watch these kinds of militaries, and they're so, from a dictator standpoint, his own military is, in fact, the biggest threat because they might assassinate him.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sure.
So, yeah, let's be honest. We don't really know. Maybe there's someone who's really deeper into the intelligence that has a better idea, but, is it Kim Jong-un? Is he really Kim Jong, the previous guy's actual son? Who knows?
Sure.
Could he just be some politician that somebody else has propped up? It's like, who knows?
Yeah, even to this day, it's one of the harder countries to find out information about. Korea always has been the hermit kingdom. They've always been isolated.
Yeah, the South Koreans have, at least the newspapers are to be believed. They have some pretty good sources. Just, they talk to people.
Sure,
and
sure.
They can't entirely cut off trade with the world. There's lots of ways to get information out. But, not to mention the North Koreans post their own stuff, and you can kind of read between the lines a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So what was over there, you were just like basically, or essentially theoretically preparing for an attack, or... you're, like during the day, what did you do? What was your tasks or whatever?
In Garrison, run basically everyone's security clearances and track them. That's pretty much what we did in Garrison.
Okay, so now as intelligence, you're in charge of security clearances.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd run them.
That makes
systems.
sense.
I guess it kind of makes sense. It is kind of annoying. It's kind of one of the just the normal maintenance. Some people maintain their vehicle, and I guess we did too, and we had the parts, which we. Oh my gosh. I had a Humvee. That's kind of a rabbit trail, but it's it's kind of. I swear that vehicle was possessed, and it did not like me. This thing, it would start. Sometimes sometimes it wouldn't.
Right.
I've been learning lots of tricks. You can cover the exhaust to create more pressure. I don't know exactly how it works, but create some back pressure and help start the vehicle in the cold weather, especially. But this thing would sometimes start and sometimes not. I kid you not. We finally got this thing going before a fuel problem. It'd start when you wanted it to. You could walk out randomly. It started to start. It was like
Everything was peachy.
The day of, I walk out there. I'm feeling good. And, I'm going to make sure I even get up early. I go out there and start it just because everything's going right, and I turn it and nothing. I'm we're frantically working on this thing, and the first sergeant walks up. I'm like, what's up and what's going on? He's like, yeah, this thing is not working for start. I don't know what it was. We had it going yesterday. So I kid you not. He walks up. He flips the switch. It starts right up. He's like, what's up? So I'm like, I know this vehicle hates me. So as I don't believe this for a second. So as he's walking away, I reach in and I turn the switch. Nothing. It's like, so, I mean, yeah, that vehicle eventually, some new private acquired, provided some help with the local workforce by talking to his buddy and looking out the window and driving it underneath a trailer. So I was very annoyed because that particular problem, they took it without, we were signed for it, and they took it without asking us. And it was
it was on your head, technically.
No.
I mean, it could have been, I should say.
It was supposed to, but everyone, it was kind of like, I mean, they knew that it wasn't. I think it was, my sergeant was signed for it. Obviously, they weren't,
sure.
Would asked him. It just kind of it was just like, this vehicle is cursed. And that was, actually take it back. It was right after a couple months. It was I think I had 3 months left. They had just taken it back and they did a complete work on it. They basically had a new hood, new everything. It looked shiny and pretty. And then they took it into the field problem without asking us and drove it under a vehicle and crashed it. And at that point, I was like, I just give up.
Oh.
So. But yeah, I was kind of short. And it's kind of a frustration with the Korean system, at least at the time. I don't know if I've heard they've changed it. I don't know much. But basically everyone's on a 1 year rotation, which in practice means that, I mean, you can get a 3 year, but most people didn't. Especially, I mean, I got in because I wanted to deploy, and they sent me to Korea, and I was very annoyed. So I was like, I'm not going to stay. The thing is, a lot of people are like that. They get to do that 1 year, so it takes about a year to really get spun up on a unit, in my observation.
Oh, sure.
To really, kind of know who to talk to get things done and such. So what happens is, by the time you're about figuring it out, you're leaving.
Right. And especially you being your first posting.
Yeah.
Even more so.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, well, Korea's a bad place to send brand new soldiers. It makes it easy for the guys at HR to keep their 3 year cycles, I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
But it's just a bad place to send new soldiers because it's just static. It's kind of the bottom of the barrel because of the wear and tear. It's the bottom of the barrel for
Sure.
supply. So you're just sitting there, and it's kind of difficult to maintain transmission. Alcohol is right off base and cheap, and a lot of guys get in trouble.
Sure.
That way. So I mean, you got a guy who just got at the house, and he's taking his first steps into making his own decisions, and you get the young kid, and he's just going to make stupid. Decisions.
Did speaking of like being off base and alcohol and everything, what was the Army's relationship like with locals? I know I've talked to some guys who are Marines in Okinawa, and it's very not friendly. The relationship. Was that the case in South Korea? Or was there maybe a little more understanding?
It depends. It depends who you talk to.
Okay.
If I understand correctly, it's been a while since I read it, but I think a drunk Marine raped a 13-year-old girl, and that didn't go over well.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, well, obviously.
In Okinawa, especially, it's like, the Japanese culture is already a little bit xenophobic, so and you add that in, and that, Koreans, you got the people who think you're the greatest thing ever. You had one walking through Itaewon, I think it was. We had some old man who may or may not have been, just his demeanor, I'm not sure. Because of the language difference, it was kind of hard to tell, but not sure he was fully sane, but he was just screaming at us, America and go home, America go home.
Sure.
So I don't know if he had a bad experience or what. There was one instance where a couple of girls, like teenage girls, were walking next to a convoy, and just because of the way, I'm trying to remember. It's been so long, I can't remember if this happened before. I think it happened a couple of years before I got there. But just because, armored vehicles don't have very good visibility, the driver ended up going over them. And it was not a pretty sight. And
sure,
the portion of the locals that were not happy with having a foreign military in their country were, basically just pointed at that and said, look here. So,
right.
He had a couple things that were kind of comical and also kind of like, I guess a couple of guys, I think they were from the 7th Cav Regiment. Yes, because there's old regiment, still exists. Went out on Thanksgiving Day and flipped over a car.
Shocker.
And we all got locked down until somebody figured out who it was, and they of course got in trouble. I don't know what happened to them, but it was kind of like, come on, guys. It's funny, but yeah, don't do that.
Right. If you'd not been locked down, you would have found it funnier, probably.
Oh yeah, I'd still find it funny, but just like kind of
right.
There are consequences for your actions,
et
cetera, et cetera. This is like, you mix alcohol with. The catch is honestly, it was funny, but
yeah, for sure.
And you're some Midwestern town where everyone knows each other, and when you get off your drunk, you go help the guy fix his car up or something. But when you're in a foreign country with the language barrier and the international incident looming over the diplomats in the diplomat's mind, it's you kind of got to avoid that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But there are a couple of things. Korean food is awesome. I'm apparently one of few people who actually likes kimchi, but they got a lot of things that are pretty great.
And haichus you were mentioning earlier before we started.
Yeah,
the old.
I got to experience. I get to go to change from the normal saying about I got to go to foreign countries and find their candy and eat it and enjoy it before it becomes cool in America.
You, as hipsters would say, you liked high shoes before they were cool.
Exactly. But I think there's little things people always remember is that the Korean cab drivers are. I mean, a lot of the rules over there of the road are kind of just general guidelines,
right?
So,
suggestions.
Yeah, loose suggestions.
Sure.
But they're meant to be like a baseline
Uh-huh.
for the speed limit is a lower limit, not an upper limit.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, on base they're pretty strict with the rules, but yeah, you go off base, some of them were to definitely get you there quickly.
You're right.
So, but yeah, they were good at it too, though. So it was like it was a little scary, but you realize these guys actually know what they're doing. I've driven, recently just down in North Carolina, and I drove with someone who, they could drive fast, but they didn't know what they were doing. So
anybody can put the pedal to the floorboards.
Yeah. So, but I mean, Korea's. I mean, they say, and it was true. It's a great place to get promoted and a great place to lose rank. Because I mean,
you can go either way.
Yeah,
sure.
Because it's easy to stand out. Because a lot of times people are. I mean, when there are more people doing stupid things and looking bad, then it's easier to be the one who stands out as the one who's not doing that. So,
sure,
there's a certain amount of that. But yeah, for me, it was just kind of like, this is not where I want to be. I want to be in Afghanistan or Iraq because that's why I joined the Army. To actually do the job.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So for me, it was kind of like, this is frustrating, but I'll get through it, and got my year and moved out. So after that, I went to Fort Drum, New York. And to my great annoyance, I went into a unit that had just gotten back. So I was like, I was like coming out. I wish I had known to talk to people more, but I kind of expected people to, people join the Army and they not get sent to one place or another. Because when we were in AIT, everyone's waiting for their orders, and some people were like, I don't want to deploy. And of course they deploy, and he was like, I got in to deploy, and if I don't, I'm going to hate my life.
And you don't deploy.
I don't.
I think the Army does that on purpose.
It's possible. That is the sole reason I re-signed for 4 more years, is because that was one of the requirements. I will go to a deploying unit.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so you could direct your destiny to a certain extent.
Yeah. You can kind of bargain on that, and I mean it's free to them to give that to you, so of course they're happy to.
Sure.
So. Fort Drum.
Okay, so Fort Drum, cold, snow, etc.
I enjoyed Fort Drum. I grew up in Washington, so I'm used to snow kind of being something that you always think about, but never lasts for more than a day.
Right.
Until it turns into some nasty slush.
Yeah.
So I'm going out up to Fort Drum. The other people are like, "Oh, this is so miserable. There's snow all the time." And I'm like, "This is awesome." You go outside.
This
Washington,
is the childhood I never got to have.
Exactly,
the childhood experience. I
snowboarding.
Right.
I discovered that I'm terrible at it, but at least I experienced it, and I actually
Well, the hills there are like 20 feet high, so.
They had some. There's there's one off like 15 minutes off post that's probably, I don't know, 300, 400 feet high.
Oh, okay.
So it was a decent slope. It was good for practice. I think I went out with some friends and discovered that I was terrible. So I finally decided I'd have to go out, and basically I went out. I was like, I need to fix this. There's only way I'm going to do this is go out, basically go to the top, get on a snowboard, go 10 feet, fall down.
Yep.
Go 10 feet, fall down. Go 10 feet, fall down. I did that for about 4 or 5 hours, and by the time I was done, I could snowboard tolerably well.
Sure. You could go 20 feet before you fell down.
I could go down the hill slowly without falling over.
Right. Huh.
And I'm not quite the person who, you got these young guys that We'll just bomb the whole thing and just go straight down.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if I wasn't quite ready to do that yet. So
Yeah.
I'm a big guy. When I fall down, it hurts.
Yeah.
Got some 20-year-old skinny kid. He's about 6 foot, and he hits the ground. He bounces, and he gets back up and
Right.
laughs. I don't know. When at least once I caught the back end of my board and pointed my feet approximately straight toward the sky, and my head kind of hit the ground with an audible crack that had everyone. I kind of laid there for a second,
Right?
Kind of sit up a little shaky, and I probably had a mild concussion. But I was like, okay, I'm done for the day. Everyone's looking at me like, "Are you alive? You're alive. Okay, good."
Right. Huh. So they were at Fort Drum. You had pretty much the same job, or
Yeah, more, same job. Mostly did security clearances and
sure.
there. It was interesting. I think that was a cav unit, and I don't know, or my battalion commander in Korea was, I don't know, the officers over there were not very good. We had an XO that I'm 90% sure was very racist. It wasn't so much anything he said, just the way he acted really weird around my NCO, who's a black guy. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. The battalion commander there, I don't know. Apparently he messed up the battalion's funds for my memories were of what my understanding as a brand new private was. But basically what happened is he took us out on a field problem, used up the funds that were set aside for field problems, and only one of the 3 batteries did their tables, firing tables. And so they ended up they were supposed to do them in the field. They ended up doing them out of the parking lot. And apparently it was not well thought of because they're supposed to do it in the field for whatever reason. Which I guess makes sense, but anyways, apparently he was kind of not well thought of. So to fix this problem, they did a special PT test for the staff, and they all got 300s. My NCO was not very impressed. So it was kind of like, that did not really impress me with
Sure.
the officer corps at that point. I mean, I'd certainly met my, it's interesting because I don't remember much. I guess I didn't need him till later. I didn't know that my lieutenant for a S2 for a while. He's a pretty cool guy. I didn't get to know him very well. But did have a few conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But he got out, and I found out a couple of years ago he was, I guess, he was out running and got hit with a hit and run and died. But that was a little bit frustrating. But had some good conversations. But we'll see. I'm a Christian. He's an atheist. It was pretty hard because talking to a lot of atheists, you kind of recognize that he had how can God allow cancer, which I guess his niece had suffered from cancer a lot, which it's kind of like her.
Sure.
So I'm glad I was able to talk to him a little bit about it, but I don't know if I kind of hope he got to a good place. I don't know. I didn't really keep up with him. But after that,
So were the officers at Drum, you were kind of contrasting them to Korea. Were they better? Or?
I would say, it's hard to find it. I'd say the officers and drum. This is interesting because it's kind of. Well, each officer is different because I know our company commander in the later part of being in Korea was very good. Both my own experience and my NCO, who I talked to about, he's like, the guy's really, really squared away. Also, the first sergeant in my letter, time in Korea, I don't know if he had too many TBIs and they just didn't want to kick him out yet. But the guy was not very intelligent. He didn't seem like, he wasn't like a mean person, but just some of the way he did things was really dumb. And like I said, I don't know, a guy which at that point, maybe it was, he'd been blown up too many times and they're just letting him work out his last few years to a 20.
Sure.
But I just like kind of, if that was why, then they should have retired him. Nothing against him, but it was like kind of like, are you okay? Some of his decision making was very, yeah.
Sure.
But I mean, for drum, I think it's kind of interesting. I don't know how would I describe it. I'd say the officers were competent, but a little bit. I don't want to say authoritarian. It's not the right word. A certain amount of It was kind of interesting because I've gotten the impression it's something of a New England mentality. Although, in fairness, I haven't known that many people from New England, but it was kind of a I'd say like a lord, like a certain amount of noblesse obligée, but I'm smarter than you. So there was some.
Well, that seems consistent with like an officer mentality in general. But you saw more at drum.
It was those particular officers I work with.
Oh, okay.
But also, I mean, it is kind of like it was kind of weird. The best way I can describe it is my company commander was the first officer I'd ever heard use the word humble in a sentence. Which it sounds kind of funny, but
right?
I mean, yeah, I was sure they use it elsewhere, but it was like he actually had that mentality. He was actually a very intelligent person. He liked to talk to people and liked to,
sure.
And it kind of, in looking back, it was one of those social mistakes I made. I really should have made a point of talking to him more because that is what I enjoy. But at that point, I was very much avoiding officers.
Sure, in awe of the rank, maybe.
Maybe a little bit. But yeah, I guess almost. I didn't trust officers, and so I avoided interacting them with if I could help it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I mean, just looking back, it was one of those things I was like, I kind of wish I'd made a point of, because it would have helped me develop professionally as well. So
right.
I kind of look back, I kind of missed that. And from there, I kind of, I really regret doing it, to be honest. I should have stayed on with that unit because there were some things that, I didn't mesh well socially with the rest of the S2, but I think they were decent people and I could work with that.
Yeah, professionally, you got the job done.
Yeah, some of it is that the things they had against me were legitimate. There were some mistakes I had made on the job, and so that I did. Some things were kind of held more, but against me than they should have. But it's like it wasn't unreasonable. It was
sure.
It was like, you know what, I can see where you're coming from in that. So, and there's also just like kind of there's a little bit of social divide, and I was still working out how to deal with that. But honestly, some of that, I really appreciate there were some really pretty competent people there. So, So,
But you say you had to transfer to get the deployment.
well,
Or
I didn't have to. What it was is I told my mother that if I could, so I resigned. I'd go for Washington. It was where I grew up, be close to the family.
Sure, sure.
I don't know. I kind of wish I hadn't done that. I should have just that unit ended up deploying almost like the same time as I did, anyways.
So you could have stayed. And
I could have
still
stayed, and I think there was a good structure that I would have. I mean, like I can't say enough for if you're in the military, find a mentor. You got to find a good one because there's
sure.
And I probably needed it more than other people because I basically kind of started at ground zero in terms of just understanding social systems.
Sure.
So I think that would have done pretty well for me. As far as the I mean, I had some kind of funny stories. Our battalion commander was kind of crazy. He was funny. There's a couple anecdotes. One thing he was kind of telling us about how it was really interesting because one thing I found that I'm good at. Sometimes I'll see a little thing and it's like I'll take it and like, whoa, you see this little concept and you apply that to a bunch of other things. One is almost the substance figure is almost useless, but the form of it is very useful. Because when you're angry, you tend to lose control, or at least to have a distorted perception of things. But if you're a battalion commander and you need to really make a point, you shouldn't lose your temper. But yelling and
you can temporarily
raving and throwing your helmet and putting on a big show can definitely denote that you guys probably should treat this with some importance because the battalion commander threw his helmet across the. I mean, he was kind of chuckling about it because he was telling us about it, but it was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But another one is there's turkeys all over the place on Fort Drum.
Okay.
So, being cavalry, of course, he has to carry his cavalry sword while he's on the run, on a battalion run. So there's turkeys going across the road, and he has a sword. He's a little bit crazy, so he starts chasing. He started chasing them down. So they of course got out of the way. I guess they figured out he was probably serious. He definitely wanted to secure one.
He had intent.
Yeah. He also apparently he wanted to. He said that he wanted to get a live Wolverine because that was our unit
mascot.
Yeah. But of course they told him no. But he was a little bit. He definitely had a lot of character, which was funny.
Right.
It's one of those things. It's like that's not one of those things that they teach you. You have to have character, but character or good. But it's kind of as a leader that having those fun things is like, oh, I'll follow that guy. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So and things like that. But after that, I went I transferred to Fort Lewis. Rediscovered why I liked the snow and it was nice and bright out because I come to Fort Lewis and it's 10 degrees warmer and it feels twice as cold because it's humid and you get the rain blowing and it's gray out and miserable.
Yep.
So it was nice to be close to the family and having where I grew up, old friends and such for a while. So.
And then you deployed to Afghanistan from there?
Yeah, I deployed for Afghanistan from there. It was a striker unit, which was kind of interesting. It was interesting. I mean, I did a very broad range of units. I mean, I guess cavalry and striker are kind of sort of the same thing. They're
okay.
They both had some some really good salesmen tell them that they're part of the light infantry concept,
Yes.
whereby they, whereby they, basically give you less equipment or more equipment to carry,
Right.
or something like that.
So you can be lightweight. Or something.
Because I don't know. Like I was quite happy when I was like, I just like when they got rid of the beret, because that hat annoyed me. Not only is it a lousy hat, it's just as far as hats go, it's so easy for it to make it look like crap. But it was just, you spent so much time just shaving your hat and getting it perfect, and then realizing you shaved it too much, so now you have to go get a new one.
Right.
And it flopping, not just so. And I mean, back when they first sprayed out the beret, they put it on their head like a proper beret, just kind of flop it there.
Right. But no, it needs to be ironed exactly the same.
Yeah. And not to mention it was a unit award. So I think the precise wording was to emulate the light infantry concept of the range, because we want the whole army to emulate the light infantry concept of the Rangers. We're all going to wear black berets.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And
Raw.
This is, yeah. He should have just given us green berets, then we'd all be special forces.
Right.
I mean, this is General right before he retired, and then proceeded to not fix the VA. So, I mean, I guess par for the course.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was Afghanistan like? What was kind of your opinion of the deployment? Or your experience?
Let's see, some standouts. We had a real good takeaway, I guess, bottom line up front. Afghanistan wasn't what did it end up being, like a 20-year war?
Yeah, something like.
Thinking about it was a 14 years, but it was like, it wasn't a 14-year war. It was 14 one-year wars, because one unit enters, another leaves, and there's a couple of weeks of key personnel kind of doing left seat, right seat, but they may or may not do. It's just, there's a lot of disconnect.
Sure.
One of my jobs was, when I got there, was going through the data of previous units, and a lot of it was like a bunch of dots on a map. What do they mean? No idea. Delete. I mean, because it was useless to us. It may have been really important, but it had no meaning, because there was so much to go through that it was just kind of.
And there was minimal handoff of all that info from the previous unit.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of it was really annoying. It was to me, at least from my understanding at the time, it was basically just a great example of how politics can screw up military operations badly. Basically, the way it's explained to me is, we can't do a full left seat, right seat, because some politician had promised not to have more than so many soldiers in Afghanistan.
Right.
So I got my captain was there for 20 days, I think. I was there for 3. And I mean, they tried.
Oh, 3 days of handoff.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sure.
And then the rest of the guys got there. I mean, I think it's been a while. It was me, my senior NCO, got there. It's been a while. And basically, it's I think I got a little bit more than the other guys, but it wasn't that much. And it was basically kind of going from not knowing really much at all about how to run a co-ops to, congratulations, your day co-ops now. And
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of, it was kind of funny. I mean, it's just one of those things, it's not really what you expect it to be, but ran drones. I forget the name of the paperwork. Basically, we had to a lot of, we have to file this paper perfectly because they're flying really close to the border, so we have to notify the proper authorities. And of course,
sure.
the Pakistanis will, complain periodically that we're spying on them or we're crossing into their airspace. And we would send up the picture, here's our GPS map of where we traveled and so on. But so you have to be careful when there's the Pakistanis shot up there's zero doubt in, I think, anyone's mind that watched it that there was a Pakistani army that shot up a couple of Afghan checkpoints.
Oh, sure.
Basically, someone comes across the border with military-style weapons and fires at an outpost and then retreats right across the Pakistani border.
Right.
It doesn't take a genius. We of course don't spy on the Pakistanis because they're our allies.
Right.
So we never looked inside their border. They even had two officers two Pakistani officers who could see the video feeds to make sure we never looked.
Sure.
They weren't in my talk. I think they were in a separate unit's talk. So they made sure that we never looked inside the Pakistani border because we don't spy on our allies. Yes. So anyways, yeah. It's like, everyone knows and everyone denies and everyone.
Sure.
It's like, it's one of those weird things where there's a reason the uniform types get annoyed at the CIA because the CIA does everything does all the things that we're supposedly are tripping over ourselves not to do. And then the CIA just goes ahead and does it.
Oh, sure.
Officially, the U.S. military never spies on Pakistan, but we all know that the CIA has a drone campaign there, and they're always spying because it's sovereign. But we don't do it because it's sovereign airspace, but the CIA does it because...
Right. Yeah.
It's like, just be consistent.
Right.
Everyone knew that the Taliban's operating out of Keneshera.
Right.
It wasn't a secret. So like people were like, "Oh my gosh, we found Bin Laden. He was hiding in Pakistan all along." What the? It was one of those things where it's kind of like Vietnam. For political reasons, they don't want to expand the war, so they don't.
Oh, sure.
They don't blow a hole in the jungle and drive a column of tanks up to Hanoi. It's kind of like, there's a lot of political considerations, I realize, but from a military standpoint, it's really annoying to watch.
Yeah.
So. But, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I worked the Palantir system, which is really good, but when you're starting from scratch, I don't know, they wanted me to upload stuff in there, and at that point I was a little too frazzled because I had to, the first, 3 months, I was a glorified phone operator. I had a secret phone,
okay.
and I had a nipper phone. What was it? I had a secret chat. I forget what it's called. It's probably changed by now. But, multiple rooms I have to track, battalion, brigade, or it's different drones.
Okay.
To communicate with them. They want everything written down, but honestly, sometimes it was just easier to just even call. You get in trouble for it every once in a while, but you at least get the job done. So, there's a good reason to write it down just for posterity, so they can verify you did the right thing. But sometimes you just have to make a phone call. What are you saying?
Right.
So,
what was,
but like I said, glorified phone operator. It was kind of funny because they wanted me to do. it was one of those times when, like you look up the sky and they say, "Thank you, Jesus, I needed that rescue." Because they're like, why aren't you going through these files? Because they wanted me to do a bunch of those deletions of old data.
Oh yeah.
And my sergeant, they're like, why isn't he getting any of this done? So one of my sergeants, he's like, he liked me, so he's like, what's going on? And like at that moment, someone called me on the zipper phone. So I said, "Give me a sec." Someone called me on the nipper phone. So I'm like, and like
he's like, I think I see your problem.
Yeah. So I'm like, he's like, see, yeah. He's like, I got you. So I mean, it was like it got a little better. I mean, you learned some things. Mm-hmm. And also, I was like, I made the mistake of giving our a geowent. So basically, he had a lot of. It's some pretty impressive stuff. I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail, but in terms of what he could do with maps and with different types of maps.
Sure. He had more capabilities than Google Maps at his fingertips. Let's put it
a
that
lot
way.
more. It was amazing. I mean, he was really cool. And I thought I was impressed, and I got his number so I could ask him questions, and I made the mistake of giving his number to someone else.
Oh, uh-oh.
And he was not happy about it. And it was one of those, just rookie moments of like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because he's in his back room trying to, concentrate and do his thing.
Right.
And everyone wants his cool products. So everyone, like, I got his number. Yeah. I'll hug you up.
Right.
So, yeah.
Huh. What was kind of your I don't know if you have like your biggest memory of Afghanistan, or kind of your biggest takeaway?
I mean, as far as takeaways for learning, military learning, yeah, do a better handoff. That was, especially since I was so new, just that one kind of hurt. It was like, I basically kind of like, I knew generally what to do, but in terms of, it was like relearning it, reinventing the wheel. That's when we talk about the 14 1-year wars. It's like everyone gets there and they by the time they figure it out, they go home.
Right.
So there's some things that was it's kind of tragic coming, but the previous unit, one of the things they warned us is that if the Afghan checkpoints say that they're being shot up, check. Because it's like it was one of those things, and they did it and they realized it was a really bad idea. Afghan checkpoint, oh, we got shot up. Can you give us some aid? Oh, sure, we were here to help. Here's a bunch of aid. Oh, all of a sudden, all the checkpoints are getting shot up. So, yeah, we took their advice, and you're getting shot up. Here's our drone. There's no fire coming in.
Right.
Yeah, sure, guys. So, oh, can you send us some aid? No, that'll be no. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of, I mean, the corruption that we've basically we've organized and legalized our American corruption. It's like, I mean, my brother-in-law, he's trying to get a permit because he's a contractor, and they were like, yeah, for $250 you can expedite that permit, or you can wait 2 weeks. He's like, right. You're not busy, are you? No. Well, they're just going to make him wait 2 weeks unless he pays them $250 extra, which will go into the county coffers and pay their salaries. But it's been conveniently legalized and organized so that no one's taking too much, I guess. Mm-hmm. But in Afghanistan, the corruption is just kind of like normal. Like, you pay this contractor, he's going to pay his guys and shave a little off the top. Sure. And it's just kind of, so, I mean, yeah. So that sort of thing is kind of normal to them. They're just like, oh, yeah, that's normal course of business. You try and get the Americans to give you more aid by saying that, you're being shot up. So, I mean, some other stories about that one they had, because along the border, it's a bunch of little, basically like They're kind of like tiny little castles, I guess. I mean, maybe. I mean, I was stuck. So they're not that big, but it's basically just like a square with, maybe 15-foot walls, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But we had got the report in the morning that he got wiped out. And basically they kind of asked some questions, and my boss, she's kind of asking, found out that apparently what happened is I think it's called bazi. I'm probably grossly mispronouncing that.
Yeah.
But basically got a kid that's used for sexual favors by the men. And the Taliban, and were happy to parrot how righteous they were because they protected him and saved him because he went over and helped them. He was, I guess, according to the story. I mean, some of it's, I'm sure, is propaganda, and I wouldn't be surprised because we knew it happened. It's kind of those things. It's hard to. Yeah, they have to fix it for themselves. We can't go in and fix it for them without creating more problems.
Sure. But it was an Afghan outpost?
But, yeah, it was an Afghan outpost. Basically, the story goes that the guys were abusing some kid that was like 16 years old. And he finally got fed up with it and went and let the Taliban in, and they wiped out the outpost.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay.
So, yeah, my commanders, I guess my S2s. I remember overhearing conversations. She's like, we need to make sure we talk to these guys, because she was talking to some of the, I guess, the local commanders. We talk about this sort of thing to you guys and how you're not supposed to do it, and this is what happens. So,
right.
I mean, yeah, because it was. It's like, it's hard to feel bad for those guys if they were actually doing that. It's like, yeah, they kind of got what they had.
Right.
Deserve what they got. So, but I mean, a couple of things. I think in my area, it was kind of weird because, I mean, different areas could be vastly different. My battalion, they took away our engineers and sent them somewhere else, and took away one of our companies and sent them off to a talk way up north. I mean, I didn't really interact with them almost the entire time. But I mean, our entire time there, we never even got shot at once.
Sure.
I mean, we had some National Guard guys who came through, and I mean, I've heard this before. Basically, there are National Guard units and there are National Guard units. And until you've experienced both of them, you're kind of like, some of them are squared away and some of them are very much not. Basically, these guys came through, didn't announce themselves, just kind of showed up at base, which is a big no-no. I mean, you don't operate in someone else's sphere without telling them.
Right.
And showed us a close-up picture of one of their vehicles with a, like, super close-up. Like, the picture was of a spot about 5 inches wide. That supposedly someone had shot at one of their vehicles, and they wanted us to officially record it. And like, I was like, why is that? And someone's like, oh, they're looking for a combat action badge.
Right.
So, yeah.
And how that bullet scar got there, who knows?
Yeah. Well,
it could be legitimate. I'm not knocking.
Basically, what happened is they came into our area. I think they announced they were getting shot at. We looked and saw nothing, and they came in and said, "Hey, look, there's this bullet scar." I mean, the talk CO didn't even go out and look. He's like, I'm not writing that down. We looked, there was nothing, and we spent millions of dollars of assets, $1,000,000 assets flying around looking at this place where you supposedly got shot at, and we saw nothing.
Sure.
Right, legitimate as that. So they went off somewhere else. I didn't. It's like, okay, go back to where you came from.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, we don't want to talk to you. So I mean, there's some other things like I never found out why, but we had an Afghan commander, and there's another. And this is one of those things where it was really kind of like, I don't know. It was higher in my pay grade, but it was really the people who are in charge, the combat unit in charge of an area should be in charge of an area. That they have final say.
Sure.
And apparently that wasn't the case because we had an intel unit, a intel battalion that was supposedly in charge of our base security, and they would not let one of the Afghan local commanders on. It had been invited by our commander.
Oh, sure. Yep.
And I was like, I don't know what their reasons were. I never found out. I don't think there could have been any legitimate reason, honestly, if he's an Afghan army commander. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you know he's Taliban, then you should be apprehending him.
Right.
And if you don't, then he's an Afghan army commander. And if you're worried about him, just, have an extra honor guard, shall we say.
Right, yeah.
So, I don't know what that was. It was just one of those things. It's like, this is stupid. So that was a little, I mean, maybe there's some reason that I never heard, but it's hard, like I said, it's hard to imagine one that could have legitimized insulting an Afghan army counterpart.
Sure.
At that level. So, little things. I mean, we had some kind of little comedy things. It's like our EOD guys. They decided. No, it wasn't the EOD. It was the dog handlers. They decided that they're going to train their dogs by burying their test explosives all in one spot in the middle of the night out near a road, which translates to somebody walks by, sees someone burying something on post in the middle of the night. They naturally and quite responsibly run off and say,
somebody look at this right now.
Yeah. So, yeah, our sergeant major may have
chatted with them.
Yes. Nice, friendly sergeant major
on
chat.
the intricacies of scheduling your training exercises with the proper authorities.
Well, besides this, it was just like, that's not how you train, because you want them to be able to identify different chemicals because they put them all in one spot.
Oh, right.
It was like so many levels of stupid, but it was just kind of, I don't know. I talked with their NCO, and I think she was kind of like, just like, oh my God, you guys, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
So apparently I don't know. Yeah. Whole base on alert, EOD went in and dug it out and
right.
Looked at the label and said, huh.
This is traceable.
We know where this came from. But I think they got to use their little robot. They were quite happy with that, I'm sure.
It'd be great if the unit that was called out to investigate it was the guys who buried it, and they're like, this looks really familiar. Why are we here?
Yeah. But, yeah. I mean, the little things. I don't know. The only time there was there was two separate things. We had a new unit that was coming in to replace. It's been a long time. It's kind of one of those kind of sad, but kind of people when play stupid games with stupid prizes. We had some guys coming from a wedding party, and we had a new unit that was, I guess a little. I can see why that might be a little bit more itchy because they're new to the area and nervous. But the guys kind of were stupid. But they were clear in the convoy, just on the road, lined up, clearing out a IED, and some guys coming home from a wedding got impatient, so they revved from behind and came close, and they're like, get back, and then they waited a little while and they revved again, and get back. And then the third time they revved and they were driving straight at it or near our guys. And they're like, this is a bomb, and fired and killed all 4 guys in it. So, I mean, it wasn't a bomb, but it was like one of those. You should know better. You don't charge a convoy sitting there with loaded guns. You just don't be stupid. But everyone knows that. I mean, we had people that car bombs are how you take out a bomb-proof vehicle. You drive up right next to it. They had that happen, I think, right outside Canada, the main gate at Canada Air Force Base. I mean, I don't care how. I mean, it doesn't. 500 pounds of explosives in a van, you drive it next to just about any vehicle in the world, and
right, yeah.
So, I mean, well, that's one I think is probably the worst day of the Army for me. Was we had one of our guys. I don't want to say too much about how it worked, but basically they cleared an area and they didn't, and they drove over a spot that had been, or the EOD did their
investigation, or they cleared
their rollers and such. Cleared an area, and then they went back over this same area, but they didn't go over the spot that had been cleared. And the way it hit I think it was like a 20-pound bomb, which isn't really that big the way they go, but 20 or 40 pound. But it just hit the vehicle just the right way, and was it 3 guys in the back? But I knew one of them fairly well because I ran the system. I cannot remember what it's called, but basically that you ask a bunch of personal questions so they can identify you. If you're ever captured, make sure it's you. But he said some things and just kind of talking. Really impressed me. So when the call got out for his information, I was like, oh, I remember that guy. Sure. So I was kind of happy because basically I heard it was, we had a striker kill and no KIA. So I mean, I guess newbie me is like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. It's a happy day.
Right.
Give it a couple hours, and then I kind of heard, they just didn't wake up. So. So I think he was like 18 or 19. He just got married to his high school sweetheart and baby on the way, and that was that. So.
Yeah.
So from there, I think toward the end I got I got a little twitchy toward the end. I think I was running a little bit on nerves too much. But toward the end, I could, if they said someone said contact, I had like everything within seconds. Call this. I'm already calling. But I annoyed brigade because they're like, don't ask us for assets, and I'm always telling them. I keep telling them, I just want to know what's in the area in case we ask for it. So I know. I'm just trying to keep myself. But they kept getting annoyed because they think I'm asking for their thing. It's already on a plan. I'm just asking what you have in the area. But I had all that down in seconds and already knew if anyone said contact, but nothing ever really came of it. But toward the end, I was just kind of, I was just exhausted at the end. We weren't even there for that long. I can understand guys. I think we were there for almost just short of 7 months. Guys, I was tired at the end of that. And guys who did 18 months, they must have been beat.
Yeah, I bet. It just adds up.
Yeah. So, I remember wording, I think it was in Band of Brothers where it talks about they figured out that guys became operationally ineffective after 90 days of heavy combat. I don't know if they've ever run numbers on, low level and conflict where you
like the more modern style.
Yeah. So it's like we had it pretty easy, and some of it I think I got tired because I was just running on nerves. I went and prepped for for war, and at least mentally, and it was like, this is a lot of boredom. So I'm always amped up on nothing. So I kind of, just one of retrospect is I should have found a better way to kind of just chill.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but I mean, it was, like I said, it was different for everyone. We had, in the same brigade, we had like basically half a battalion covering an area the size of Rhode Island, and the same brigade, different battalion had their entire area was one town of about, it was like 7 square miles.
Oh, wow.
And they were getting shot at all the time, every day.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
So,
and you had massive territory.
We had massive territory, but the thing is, our Afghan were fairly squared away, so they pretty much had it. I mean, there was a certain amount where we knew we controlled the road. It was the main road into Afghanistan for everything that came through Pakistan on trucks. Mm-hmm. And we knew, kind of up north, they did their thing. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of where the roads were open, we controlled it, and where they weren't, then they did. So it's kind of, so I mean, we were in some to that. I think, man, came home. I like, it was one of those things where it was like, once you come home, you realize just how tired you were. I was like, that was kind of like, I was like, I underestimated, just like my vision just went really bad for a while. Just because I asked them about it when they were, medically, and I was like, yeah, you're just tired. It'll go away. It's like, oh, didn't realize it could get that bad. So, after that, I think, I don't know, I was a little butthurt because they broke up my brigade after that. Like right after we got home. It's like, I was my unit. And you're just like, but I think I could get, this organization, but it was like, kind of like, that was mine. Why do you have to get rid of it?
Right.
Like, I still got the commemorative firearms. I thought it was kind of cool. But I went down to Arizona, and that, I think, I was kind of, to me, it was just kind of like, it was a kind of a frustration. It was interesting because basically I went down there, and because I was short, they're like, we need a body in supply. So they put me in supply, and then they have a supply NCO who actually knows how to do her job. Mm-hmm. Whereas me, I'm kind of bubbling. So it ends up, she does most of the work, and I just kind of carry boxes around everywhere. Right. It was kind of like, okay. I mean, I saw some things that were frustrating in terms of just, I mean, working with civilians. They weren't necessarily bad people, but there's a reason that, kind of the official reason why they swap military guys about every 3 years and swap units and so you don't get an old boys club.
Oh, sure.
So when you have a couple of civilians that have been there for 20 years altogether, you have an old boys club. Mm-hmm. And they're not necessarily bad people, but they kind of control everything.
Sure. Yeah.
And they know how to keep the right people happy. And I mean, I don't think they were necessarily bad, but it was kind of frustrating dealing with them sometimes. I mean, they probably actually did a better job than I could have, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, you're supposed to, you create a situation where they create their own job security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Instead
of kind of perpetuating the Army ideal, at least, is that you're constantly training the next generation. Always training the next generation. So it was kind of interesting. I finally made sergeant there, and at that point, I was having some health problems, and it was kind of like, I wanted to kind of go do more, but I just like, if I stay in, I'm going to end up getting a medical. So my contract was running out, and I'm not gonna push for that. So
sure. Huh? What's your advice to kids who ask you about they're thinking about joining the military? and they ask you for advice, what, or if someone did, I don't know if someone has, but how would you respond to that? What would your advice?
If you have anything medical, record it. Make sure it's written down, and go to sick call.
Oh, while you're in,
I hate sick call. I hate the way that basically they set it up so that you skip PT, which is, if you're a shammer, that's what you do. You want to get out of the hard part of the day. So if you're not a shammer, then you'd be like, I don't want to skip PT. Mm-hmm. But just go to sick call. Like, I hated it. I mean, but it's kind of, I should have gone for some things. Take care of your knees. Go to a chiropractor. Get a massage. Get a take care of your joints. I mean, some of that's more for if you're, I'm 6'4". I'm a big guy, so joints are important. Mm-hmm. The same thing. Learn how to run. There is a correct way to run. I didn't do it, and I paid for it.
Sure.
They started toward the end after the damage was already done. They started learning that. And the Army started. It was actually an Army trainer that they sent me to. It was called the pose running method. It's basically just the way that professionals runners run, and so that they can, run thousands of miles and not destroy their joints. But learn how to run, learn to do it, and practice it, because, I mean, if you want to have a long career in the Army, then it'll eliminate a lot of pain toward the end of it.
Right.
So, I mean, go to the gym. I made the mistake of not doing so. It's to me, I went in, a lot of my mentality was I approached it as an intellectual exercise. How do you be a good analyst? Mm-hmm. But, I mean, and that's kind of what my idea of professional development is. I'll go read a book. Where the catch is there's a certain amount of unfair bias towards PT scores, just because they're easy to read on a piece of paper. The first sergeant, he's looking at, who do we promote? So this guy's got a 300. Well, that's a good thing. Whereas, this guy has a lot of generic Army knowledge and knowledge about the history of tactics, and that's a little harder to test for.
Harder to quantify too.
Harder to quantify, they really, especially for skills based stuff, I think they really fail, or could do better, at least in terms of why don't we have a skills test for this that should go into your record? And this guy has scored 80% or 100% on the skills test, so that should be something that they take into account when they're looking at who do we promote. So I mean, it's kind of a joke that, but the sad thing is it's a little bit too close, uncomfortably true, that if you could be as lousy as your job as long as you don't do anything
right. Yep, as long as you get a good PT score.
You can be lousy at your job as long as you don't get in trouble, and you have a good PT score, and you will get promoted ahead of your peers.
Ahead of your betters, even, maybe.
Ahead of your betters, yeah. So,
which is where the salt really lands on the wound.
Yes, very much so. And I mean, I understand. I was not a very good soldier, but I think I could have. It's just like I said earlier, in terms of it's difficult to be a good. In my mind, it's difficult to be a good soldier and be a good analyst. It's not impossible, but it's not something that comes naturally. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of leaned internally. I always try to make myself a better analyst. I didn't spend as much time when I should have on being a good soldier, on maintaining that physical fitness, and some of that was just I didn't like it. To be fair, it's just kind of a little. I should have been worked a little harder on it, but so it was just kind of internally I kind of thought it was stupid, which is not right. It was not correct, because you really do need that, and you should be. And some of it's not necessarily a strict knowledge, because if you're an analyst, they don't care. as much. But if you can go out, it's a way to generate respect with a lot of combat units. Is be really good at physical fitness, because then you're one of them, and you can interact with them, and you can kind of be buddies with them, and that's how you get the little things that they'll talk to you. A lot of that social stuff. What did you see on patrol today, man?
Right.
So,
right.
And build
it's one thing to be a pogue, but it's another if you also look like one. That's a Marine thing.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of joked about how S1 is often had a bunch of the gym rats in it, and they're like, "What does S1 need the gym rat for? Could you just give me my paperwork on time?"
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Huh.
I mean, it's kind of absurd. It's kind of funny because it's like I saw it against multiple units. S1 sergeants that are just like have to be harder than everyone else. They go do kind of just this PT that's harder because it's harder. It's like, well, yay! But can I get my paperwork on time?
Yeah, good for you, but you're not helping me.
I put my leave in. Do you still have that? Do I need to give you another copy?
Right. Right.
So I mean, yeah. So, yeah. But, well, I mean, it's kind of, it's a give and take. I mean, I got two brothers that went in and after me. I advised both of them not to, and both of them love it. So, I mean, there's give and take. I think it's a great learning experience, and I think if you approach it that way, and I mean, that's kind of a general life advice. If you approach everything, if it turned out crappy, well, that was a learning experience. And what can I pull from that?
Sure.
And so, I mean, I think for me, I learned a lot. You learn how to handle yourself in a lot of ways that I didn't really have it prior to that. So, for me, it was great. I mean, some of it, I think I benefited because I went in because I knew I was a social, not outcast, but something of a social misfit. I just,
sure,
prior to that, and that I just didn't have that. I knew I was going in. I knew it would suck for a while, and it very much did.
But you embraced
it.
So
I embraced it. Yeah, I didn't even mean to lead into that, and you pulled it right out. So, I mean, it's a lot of funny moments, a lot of learn to just live. I mean, I already had dark humor, but you got a lot of things that you can just laugh at it. It's like, it doesn't actually matter that much. Some of it's just, we kind of joke about how it builds character, but it does.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So,
yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, some of that's also, I mean, it kind of the thing no one wants to admit is that, I don't know how I say this. I mean, the thing that really hurts in the Army is the fact that you can't walk away. But at the same time, that builds because you made a commitment. You know you're going to stick with it. I mean,
sure.
It's kind of funny when I was a basic. I mentioned to the people, how many of you, when you're running in the dark and you're tired and you're like, I hope I sprain my ankle in this hole, and then you jump over the hole. And you're like, I hope I sprain my. No, I'm not going to do it. If I can just get out of this is miserable.
Right.
I hope I sprain. No, I cannot do that to myself. So it's just kind of learning that, it's crappy, but, it's not actually, doesn't stop me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, so, yeah, it's worth going. I mean, I think if you're not sure, I would say go for, 2 or 3 years, and I think I'd say at least 3. I think you need 3 to really get a feel for it. you might not like it at the beginning, and then you realize, this is really where I'm at.
Do they have 2-year contracts?
I don't think they do anymore.
Okay.
I think they did. They were really trying to get people in for combat arms.
Sure. That's something that I could see having a shorter contract for, but anything that takes training, they'd probably need a longer contract just to justify the training time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I am uncomfortable with your implication that combat arms doesn't require training. Well, I don't think that's what you meant to say, but yeah.
Sure, not that specifically, but
yeah.
I could see it.
They're just trying to get people in.
And,
and I think they turned away from it because it was like people aren't here long enough. They're just they're already short, or they're already checked out by the time they've arrived. So, but there's something to be said for having. It's a lot of countries will do 2-year. It's just part of your kind of the social contract, or the
sure, yeah.
I think South Korea does the 2-year, or it might be, I don't know. I think it's 2 years in South Korea that you have to be part of the army between, I think, by the time you're 28, you get a little bit of flexibility, but
sure,
a lot of countries will do that for 2 years, and
especially in countries where they have a mandatory involvement, then there's less need for long term.
Yeah, but also it gives familiarity. The thing is in Israel's the same way. They're a country that's Israel even more so, but they're always were there, and if they need the entire nation to go under arms they can do that. And they're not going to be as effective as professional soldiers, but sometimes you don't need.
Sure,
I don't care how many cool schools you go to. If you got 100 guys lined up at the other end of the field with automatic rifles, you're not going to cross that field.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or wrap up?
No, I think I already got them.
Cool. Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm good.
Glad I finally got you on here.
Got me on here. It's been a while.
a real struggle, a real fight, so to speak.
Yep. All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
Can I talk to you? There's a dead cat over here. Right here. I've been thinking of what was that thing over there. She has too many cats, but it's dead.